Hello and welcome to Call of Discovery, the podcast where we invite you on a journey into the Crucible for a fortnightly celebration of all things Keyforge, its community, and the excitement of discovery. I'm your host, Zach Armstrong. Ed is not with us today. He is actually on a journey with the Wild Wormhole this time. They made up, they are going on adventures together, and they are looking for the mythical Amber Pendant to get Ed more magic powers. Yes, he's already got a few. Can't go through what those are right now because we have a guest. So today we are joined by Lyle from the board game stream team CritCamp, who's here to talk about the SAS Climb, which we're going to get into what that is a little bit later. But first, Lyle, thank you so much for coming on to Call of Discovery.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. Like I was telling you before, I'm just honored to have been asked at all.
Well, that's awfully flattering. As I was doing a little bit of research before this, and listener, if you don't know, CritCamp is uh, multiplicatively older than than Call of Discovery. So
just a tad,
I'm flattered that you're flattered. So before we dive into what a SAS Climb is, which if you don't know what it is, how intriguing, a SAS Climb. We're gonna get to know Lyle a little bit better. So Lyle, we've mentioned CritCamp. So tell us about the best camp on Twitch. What's it all about?
All right. So the best camp on Twitch started in 2014, and it's me and my best friend Chris, who is also my co-host. And it sort of came around, and I know 2014 is geez, that's like almost 8 years now that we've been streaming, which seems crazy to me. But it came out of a sort of thing where Chris and we used to live in the same neighborhood in New York City, and we used to be able to have happy hours together and play games on a Tuesday night. That was what it was back then. And then we sort of moved to different neighborhoods, and we sort of missed this, weekly hang that we used to have. And Chris was always trying to get me to play board games with him and stuff like that. And he was like, "Hey, let's play board games together on Skype." And I was like, "This seems weird, but okay, let's do this because I miss you and let's hang out." And then so we started playing, board games on Skype, and he was like, "You know what? We should stream this." And at that time, I was like, "What do you even mean we should stream this? What does that even mean?" He's like, "Dude, we could do this, man. We can set up some cameras, and then we could sort of stream it to the internet, man, and people would watch it." I'm like, "Who's gonna watch a couple dudes hang out and play tabletop games?" I was like, set it up, let's do it, and we'll just sort of hang out with each other. And if anybody wants to hang out with us, that's cool with us. And we started playing some tabletop miniature games, particularly Zombicide was what we started with, and then we've sort of increased the catalog from there. But that was the game that really started it off for us. And we slowly started to get a community going, and basically CritCamp was born after that. And we've been streaming sort of regularly since September of 2014. So and our whole thing about CritCamp is we wanted to be as real as possible and positive. And the whole interaction that we have is you can come, it's almost like you are invited to play games with us if we were doing like a game night. And that's sort of like how casual it is. So we just do playthroughs, and we don't really do the, watch it played or how to play games. It's sort of just like, this is the game we're playing. We'll explain some of the rules, but you're just kind of invited to hang out with us as we play.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And yeah, there's if you like Zombicide and you haven't watched CritCamp, one, I'm shocked you exist. Two, there is so much Zombicide content if you go over to the CritCamp channel. It is impressive. Yeah, and that is such a great approach, and I think it really comes across when you're watching the stream, because you guys have been doing it for so long. But it's still just that, I think the phrase I used when we were chatting before we hit record was the right amount of casual, right? Like it feels like friends hanging out, and it feels warm and inviting. I know I very much enjoy during a work day to take a quick break and either just say hello or give you guys some kind of grief in Twitch chat as you're playing, which you all always just take and run with as fast as possible.
Right, right. No, I do appreciate that, because it is meant to feel that way. And so if you are feeling that way, then we've done our job. And we get very excited when you pop into chat, I must say. Again, this is part of me sort of being honored to be invited on your podcast. I think your podcast is beloved, and I don't want to mess it up by having me, a Keyforge pleb, is what I still consider myself, on your podcast.
Oh, please, oh, please. We enjoy the call of discovery here. Plenty of other podcasts can deal with the competitive end as much as any keen ear listener will know. I do actually love being competitive, but no, it's tough
Yeah,
to
isn't there
tough to
something?
mess it up
Isn't
here on
there
call of
something
discovery.
about you sweating during competitive? Is that a
I don't
thing?
know what you're talking about. Hold on, wait. There's somebody at the door. Oh, I'm being overpowered. Yes, Sweaty Zach. Sweaty Zach is like Steve Holt from Arrested Development. He just walks around going, Sweaty Zach!
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Now, Sweaty Zach is aggressive. Sweaty Zach is competitive. But Sweaty Zach is sports person like. Sweaty Zach plays fair, but plays hard.
Yes,
You know?
absolutely. Plays as hard as you can.
Oh, it's
um,
true. It's true. Maybe there's a side series in the future of Sweaty Zach. Sweaty Zach's workouts.
listen, guys. If you want to support this podcast and get on the Patreon, I'm sure Sweaty Zach can spin up something for you patrons.
Well, yeah, I guess I probably dive a little bit more into Sweaty Zach, and we do Beyond Discovery, our little behind the scenes podcast for Patreons. And recently, I actually did a test run just for Patreon subscribers. I did a test run of a video mailbag episode where I sat in a chair and had a cute little like scene like bookshelf next to me and like went through questions submitted by Patreon members. So maybe I could make that nice and sweaty at some
Yeah,
point.
I believe you can make that nice and sweaty, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, maybe you can submit questions to like regular Zach, or you could submit questions to Sweaty Zach. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But so speaking of Keyforge and CritCamp, you all were on the Keyforge train since the beginning because
Yes.
you had a how to play stream on Tabletop Simulator as soon as the mod was out, like in August of 2018.
Yes, that's
Right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I heard this piece of wisdom from Blake over on Help from Future Self a while back, and he said it's easier to get board gamers into Keyforge than it is to get card gamers into Keyforge. And as one of the board gamiest people on Twitch, like, what were your first impressions of Keyforge, coming from Zombicide and Ascension and all of these other just fun board games? What were your first impressions as you dove in?
Wow. So it was one of those things where we got told about Keyforge, yeah, in the summer of 2018, pre-release, and we got hyped immediately. I do want to preface that, like, we are mainly a tabletop board game stream, but Chris and I have both had experience playing card games in the past. I'm not going to go too much into it, but 95 to 96, I think we both played Magic
Mm-hmm.
until we realized that it was like a money pit and we
Right.
could no longer play Magic. And then we both hit Hearthstone so hard
Mm,
in the beta, and then I think from like 2014 to 2016 is like when I was really playing like a lot of Hearthstone.
sure.
And then it was one of those things where I think I got sick of buying expansions, or I got very salty about the ladder, something like that, and just stopped playing Hearthstone. So when Keyforge came around, there has been it sort of I knew it was going to scratch that particular itch for me. And I think the thing that really got to me and Chris, because while when we play, we can be competitive with each other and we like playing competitively, I think we value the fun that you can have out of the game more than the competitive aspects of it. And so if I'm having a good experience with a game, I will likely like that game better than just being like, I'm going to win, 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 right? So maybe I fall in sort of, if you have a balance of scales and Zach is on one side and Sweaty Zach's on the other side,
Sure.
I'm probably on the Zach side
Yeah.
of these sorts of things. And so when we heard about KeyForge and we heard, oh my god, a game that's coming out that is Magic like, Hearthstone like, but I don't have to buy a collection and try to formulate a deck, which is going to inevitably go against people that are net decking
Hmm.
and paying to play and all this other stuff that I really did not like about Magic and sort of Hearthstone and things like that. Like, what you get is what you get, and you just have to make the best of it. um, I was sort of like very intrigued by that. And so when we heard about that and we heard that there was a tabletop simulator mod for it, we were like, we got to dive in and just check it out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we found out from a friend, Matt, who I actually play Arkham Horror LCG with on stream. Um, he is a guy that tends to introduce us to new games. And yeah, he taught us how to use that mod, and we played a few games. We got hooked, and we knew that this was going to be a game that we were going to get really into probably very, very fast. So the lead up through release, and I believe it released like November of 2019, we were able to play more stuff on Tabletop Sim, put up that video about how to play it. And then at TwitchCon that year, we were able to get pre-release decks and play in a tournament.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was really, really awesome. So we were each able to get two decks each. So if you played, you had to sign up on a tournament for each day, so a
Yeah.
Saturday and a Sunday. And we were able to grab a couple of decks. And the second deck that I got was a Horseman deck, not knowing what the heck that was at the time,
Yeah.
only that it was amazing.
Right.
And yeah, we played in that sort of a couple tournaments at TwitchCon, and that's when we were like, this game is amazing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because to play in person is such a better experience than playing, even on tabletop sim, even though that's a sort of, to me, the closest way to do it virtually.
Yeah,
um,
sure.
but to play it in person for the first time was phenomenal. And then that's when Chris and I were like, how do we get decks? We got to get decks.
Right.
Like, and it became this thing where we were looking for all the events possible. We were also traveling at the time a lot for work. I was already living in Nashville, but I had a job up in New York City that I was traveling to for 1 week every month, and I was just trying to find I was trying to find tournaments up there, and there were tournaments in
Right.
Brooklyn and up in by Columbia University, and I was just like hopping into those while I was in my work trip to get more decks.
Wow. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I think it's one of those things where we kind of had an idea that we were going to love this right away, and then as soon as we played it, we were like, this is the game for us.
Yeah, and I love that the horsemen were specifically a part of one of your early decks because if you the way we think about the horsemen now, as far as like level of just how powerful and useful a card is to like advance a victory condition, the horsemen like they're fine, but they're nothing special in that way. And if
Right.
you think about it, if Keyforge was released as a constructed game, I mean, one, it'd be dismissed because you can just build a broken deck, and two, the horsemen wouldn't have been special because it's like, oh, okay, like you can include these four, horseman traded cards, but like that's only so powerful. But the
Yeah.
fact that it was algorithmically generated decks and there were four creatures that came together that were these like biblical apocalyptic legends like built around the mechanics and like reimagined in their art, right?
Hmm.
Like was just so exciting to see what the it's just the first touch of like what you can do with an algorithmically generated deck and the kinds of things you can put into a deck list. So that's I love that the horseman showed up for you in your one of your early in-person decks there.
Yeah, no, it was really great. I think you're right. It was one of those things where to get the horseman, then not really understand what I had, and then like a month later or a couple months later be like, oh my goodness, like
Hmm.
I just hit the jackpot and I didn't even know.
Right.
You know, it sort of revitalized it for me, because at that point I had already started to build up a small collection, and I was like, no, but this deck is like, this is one of the first decks that I got, you know, and then became even more special to me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I remember, and I'll keep retelling this legend until somebody finds the person who did it for me. The Horsemen came out, and somebody recognized that they were, very cool, but not as powerful as people were just assuming based on the hype. And so somebody brought a Horseman deck to a reversal event,
Hmm.
just to prove a point. And
Interesting.
the store just made it out across the early Keyforge internet. And I'm like, okay, that's impressive. That's impressive.
I
Oh.
think the thing that I haven't played that deck in a very long time, but I still have it. The my Horseman deck. I remember thinking that the most like one of the interesting things when I first played with it was it also had dis in it, and it had an arise in it,
Ooh.
and I
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking like, oh, I could play all my horsemen, they die, and then I can just bring them all back, even though I have a horseman that also brings them back.
Right.
And I was like, and so I was like, oh,
Yeah.
there's like, this is the thing with this deck, like they just never die, like they can just keep coming back. And I thought that was amazing.
Oh yeah. No, of course. And that's one of those things that you're playing the deck and you realize, wait, I can do this. Or if I play the deck in this particular way, I can achieve this really powerful game state, but only if I'm trying to get there intentionally, you know?
Hmm.
Which that's, now looking back on Call of the Archons, we're like, okay, a Rise and Horseman, like, sure, whatever. But in that moment of, drumroll please, discovery, that's the moments of discovery that so many people had with Call of the Archons and the Horsemen. And then as the game has evolved, I think I've said multiple other times, I think the game was really hit its maturity with Worlds Collide releasing, and that's where you truly started to get the rock paper scissors between archetypes and sets. And now those moments of discovery, there's so many more to have, even in my old Call of the Archons decks, just taking those to, a friendly local night where there might be some other sets, some other sets out there. If I can Sneck Lifter, a mass mutation artifact, like, oh man, now this is an impossible deck that I get to play for the rest of the match. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do love that. As like, you're right, there is always something to discover about your decks. And one of the things I think is sort of thrilling is revisiting decks from older sets when new sets come out, because things will completely change in those matchups, right? And I just remember, you picked out like sort of Sneck Lifter. The card that I always sort of think about is Desania, um,
Mm.
where it was like in the beginning, that card was like, are people really archiving a lot?
Hmm.
Like, no, like
Nobody gave it a second thought.
I'm never getting any value out of this thing. This is so stupid. And then later it getting like a power spike where I'm just like, oh my god, like I can I can destroy somebody right now. Like all the best laid plans are now like, smoldering fire.
Yep. Yep. Some of the most powerful like Archon solo decks now have to look out for a Desania.
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's such a huge swing.
yeah. And that's part of, like, it may not be discovery, it's sort of, rediscovery. And
Hmm.
I think that's very, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So one last question, not about the SAS Climb for you, Lyle, here, because you're in a unique spot to actually answer this particular question, which I
Okay.
didn't prep you for.
Oh my god,
Call Discovery
should I be scared
Curveball.
about this?
So hopefully we're getting a solid official digital version of Keyforge from Stainless Games at some point in the next 1 to 45 years.
Yep,
So
yep, yeah, yeah.
as a Keyforge streamer, what would be a feature you're hoping for in an official digital version?
Oh gosh, a feature that I'm looking for. Um, it's funny because my mind immediately goes to UI
Hmm.
and how easy things are to see for viewers.
Yes, yes. No,
My
I think
mind
as yeah.
immediately goes to a production thing.
No, and that's
Um,
good. That's good.
and so it's funny when you stream for a bunch of years and you start to find games that are your go-to games to stream. It's one of the considerations you now have for that game. Um, and I think that playing on the Crucible for so many years now, and how that UI has sort of changed over time, and that there's been a lot of quality of life sort of increases in that stuff. I would just hope that whatever's released is everything that you need to view as a viewer to understand the state of the game at any point in time,
Mm, hmm.
is able to be seen, in like a very very clear way, and that there's a way for me to sort of enlarge cards and zoom into things, check out my discard, check out my archive, check out like all that kind of stuff needs to feel seamless and
Yeah,
easy. And to me, I think like a really clean and super smooth UI would be what I'm looking for. Which would be, yeah, I think
yeah.
that would be the main thing, sort of like a quality of visual there.
That makes a lot of sense because I think if there's a digital version one, people can just try KeyForge much more easily, and
Yeah.
if it's at least stream friendly, then it's going to be so much easier to stream in a way that just looks really good, right? You see people
Hmm.
playing. I mean, Storybook Brawl isn't even like a AAA game, but you see people playing this game, and it just looks good to watch, right?
Yeah.
Like it just looks good. It just looks good to watch. So
Yeah, that
I'm
would
I'm
just
hoping
be
for
a
that too.
win-win for everyone to me. I think a bunch of us that are sort of still creating content for Keyforge, the easier it is to watch, or the more enjoyable it is to watch or listen to, um, the content, the more people might listen to and watch the content,
Right.
which will hopefully sort of grow the community, and things like that. So it's selfishly, I want it to look great so that it looks great when I stream it, and that people are enticed to play it, and then that the game grows.
Right. Yep.
I think it's one of those things where you know it helps all of us, if it's just done right.
Hmm.
So
And I melt with jealousy every time I'm watching, an MTG stream, a Magic the Gathering stream like Day 9 or somebody, and they have the overlay where I can just mouse over a card, right?
oh
and
yeah.
and the card pops up and I can look at the deck list just by mousing over another part. It's just the production quality there is just so it's so nice because I can, even me who like I have played Magic a little bit, but I'm by no means an expert. Like, and so
Yeah.
it's very nice to be able to go, oh, like I don't even know what this set is, and I can just mouse over cards and read them and say, oh, that's interesting. Like, while he's obviously focused on playing the game and other things. So, uh, anyways, I want that for KeyForge. Just as
Yeah,
a side
I
note.
do want that for Keyforge as well. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. That would be great. So, the SAS Climb.
Yes.
Yes. So, I'm excited to talk about this. If you're if you're listening to Call of Discovery during a hiatus, I'm sure you know what SAS is, but it's the synergy, anti-synergy, the score by decks of Keyforge put on decks, meant as a tool to help kind of sort a collection in just one way, and it's often a score that can tend towards how powerful a deck is in Archon Solo. Not always, but it can. So the SAS Climb, what Lyle is the SAS Climb?
All right. So there was, let's see. I started this SAS climb in April of 2019. I got to look at my notes here really quick. Yeah, April of 2019 is when I started streaming what is now known as a SAS climb.
Mm,
And what I was looking for was, there are moments where Chris and we usually stream as a duo playing tabletop games, but every now and then, due to personal schedules and other things, we stream solo. And I was looking for a game that I could do for solo streams that I wanted to be sort of episodic in nature.
Mm.
And I was like, I want to play Keyforge because at that time was like my favorite game, and I just couldn't get enough of playing it. And my local spot was only hosting, I think, one event every 2 weeks at that point, or maybe it was once a month. It ended up getting down to weekly, which was amazing pre-pandemic. But
Yeah.
yeah, I really wasn't playing it enough, and I just wanted to play more of the game. And I was starting to amass a collection, and I felt that I wasn't playing a lot of the decks in my collection. I was only playing what I considered what were like my favorite decks or my best decks because of Chainbound Archon stuff, you know. And so between me trying to figure out a way to play solo on stream and also the desire to play the rest of my collection, um, I was like, I need to figure out a way to marry the two and and go for it. So what I came up with was this, what I'm sort of entitling the SAS Climb now, or what I used to call the SAS Ladder Climb.
Mm.
And so what I did there was I took my Coda collection at the time, I sorted it on Dexa Keyforge by SAS number, highest to lowest, and then I would play the deck with the lowest SAS first on quick join games in the Crucible. And then I would either play against random people or people in chat that sort of, wanted to play similarly sassed level decks. And then I would play that deck until I got two losses. So if I kept winning, that was great. And I would just play more and more games. And then if I got two losses, then that deck was eliminated. And then I would go to the next higher level of SAS and then play that on the Crucible. And then this way, every time I soloed streamed, I could just pick up where I left off and just continue to play games, and then also get an idea of all the decks I have in my collection. Um, I was interested in this in a couple. There's a few layers of why I was interested in doing it this way, and one was at the time SAS and Dex Keyforge was still fairly new because the game itself was fairly new, and so the idea of somebody coming up with a metric to rate the decks was super interesting to me. Like,
Sure.
where are they getting this number? What does this really mean? Um, you know, how much of this number can I really trust? Or, what is it really telling me? And are there places where this number goes wrong, right? Where, do I only, if I only play my high SAS decks, am I missing a gem in lower SAS that I would never have played, And so the idea being play through all of my decks, see how the SAS number really affects anything, but also just like let me find gems in my collection that I may have overlooked because I wasn't giving it enough plays. Maybe there's a combo in there that doesn't really contribute to SAS number or the algorithm or whatever, but it just synergizes within itself so well, and it just could do well. So every expansion that's released, I have done this. So in Coda was my first one, obviously, to go through, and for the almost last 3 years now, whenever I've been solo streaming, I've been trying to push a little bit of the Skiforge content out there. And so at this stage of the game, I've played through all of the decks that I owned. So if you want to go back through the backlog on YouTube, so youtube.com/CritCamp, everybody, you could watch every single one of these videos. I think there are, gosh, of the almost 150 Keyforge videos total that we've put out, I think over 40% of them is me doing a SAS climb.
Wow.
Um,
Very nice.
yeah, and I average about 3 hours a stream, so it ends up being a lot of hours and a lot of probably days worth of
Mm.
Keyforge content
Mm-hmm.
out there in which I'm playing every deck that I own. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. And but because it's not the main thing that we do on the channel, um, it is sort of like I infill this, between things. I'm usually a little bit late in my climbs, so when I was playing AOA, Worlds Collide was out, I believe. When I was playing Worlds Collide, Mass Mutation was out. I'm always, I think, one expansion behind
Sure, sure.
when I sort an expansions. But it makes for interesting games because now you're playing against, all the previous expansions plus the next one. So
Of course.
yeah, I think that's pretty much the summary of what that is.
Yeah, and what I really like about the idea of the SAS Climb is it was developed as well. It gives kind of two benefits: one kind of content creator benefit, and then one KeyForge player benefit. Right, when you thought it up, the content creator benefit in that you have a easy structure where you don't have to like plan, or one of these words I hate, ideate.
Oh,
Right,
right, right,
you don't
right.
have to
Yeah,
make up, okay, how am I going to play Keyforge now? It's like, oh no, I'll just do the SAS Climb, and
yes,
that automatically mixes it up and gives you some interesting games. Because, and here's the part that benefits the Keyforge player of the SAS Climb, is that one, you get to go through all your decks, which many Keyforge players want to, and you're going to just have such interesting experiences. Even if a deck goes two and out, you're going to have such interesting experiences playing through all the decks you may have just glanced when you open them, go, oh, that's fine, I guess, and then tossed it in the drawer.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what
Um,
I think half the reason I really wanted to talk about SAS Climb was just for people to hear about it. Well, from you, as an idea of like how they might tackle their collection if they're just looking for a way, a structure for playing. Whether that's they can practice just one deck, which is a favorite thing of mine, to just pick one deck and take notes and play
yeah,
that really well. But if they just want to play through a collection and really kind of grind through all of their kind of more normal range decks, the SAS Climb is a great way to do that.
yeah, absolutely. I highly recommend it. It takes a lot of time, right? Especially,
Sure.
well, it all depends on how big your collection is. It takes a lot of time, but I find it extremely rewarding. One, because it's like you're getting value out of all the decks that you own. You get to play them, and funky things happen at lower SAS
Yeah.
stuff. Some of my more favorite games come out of that sort of underdog feeling, and this sort of, like, I guess, relates to my personality and CritCamp in general. Like Chris and I, again, don't ever think of ourselves as like elite players. We just think of ourselves as casual Keyforge players that are here for the fun.
Mm,
We love Sealed, we love Draft, and like other games. Those are the types of players we are. Chris and I always usually talk about how when we did play Magic and Hearthstone, the our favorite things to do were to make really janky decks and try to
hmm
make them work. When I was a Magic player, I had a Thrall deck in black and a Falcon deck in blue, and I kept trying to do these theme things that were not great, but I always had really fun times doing it.
Yeah.
And same thing with Hearthstone. We would sort of make janky decks, put them on the ladder, and try to confuse people that we were playing with, and just have fun. And that's the kind of feeling that you have with Keyforge in general. Sometimes you just get a deck and you just have to figure out how it works and do the best that you can with it. And really fun games happen when you play lower SAS decks, which don't seem to have as much synergy, or
hmm
maybe one thing that you're trying to accomplish. And sort of you can pat yourself on the back if you can get that one combo off.
Oh yes.
It's one of those ways to sort of enjoy, decks that you don't think are great, or you think are only reversal worthy, or something like that. And um, you know, I am a nerd at heart, so I've kept a very extensive spreadsheet of my entire SAS climb, where I have win rates, and I have versus SAS and all this other stuff, and it is fun for me to like sort of track that data and sort of see how well I do and be surprised at the fact that, like, I have a couple 59 SAS decks that went had like a 60% win rate or something like
Right.
that. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. There was a particular time when I was playing AOA there are two decks have that I completely, when I opened them, didn't think anything of them, and now they are two of my favorite decks that I own,
Wow.
and it's only because I've played them on the SAS Climb. One is a 64 SAS, one is a 68 SAS, and they both play semi similarly. But yeah, one of these decks is called the Miss of New Stream Crossing, and it has basically like two free markets. No, one free markets and an Oath of Poverty, but it has like six artifacts in it or
Ooh.
something like that.
Yeah.
And it's one of those. It was the first deck that I've gotten that played this way, where I don't care about board state or like the state of my own board. I am just about amber gain and like just going as fast as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at that time when I was playing this, it ended up going 8 wins on my SAS climb, which is one of the highest that I've ever gotten
Wow.
with any of my decks. And I was just so surprised because I think at the time it was like a mid 60s SAS deck.
Sure.
And I think it was just taking a lot of people by surprise by how fast it moved. And so
Yeah.
when people were stalling me out, I didn't even care because I could just gain even more amber, um, kind of thing. And so that ended up going in my quiver as one of my favorite decks, but I don't think I would have given it time of day, because, when I looked at it, it has three bad pennies in it, and
Yeah, that I will say that's usually enough to go, maybe I'll ban it.
yeah, no, three bad pennies, no seeker needle, no like,
No synergies, yeah.
yeah, no synergies, no relentless whispers or anything like that. And so I'm just like, what am I going to do with this three bad penny deck? And it ended up being like really amazing. And yeah, and it's still one of my favorite decks to play. So there are a few decks that I've sort of discovered in this way that are in like the low to upper 60s and sort of low 70s that are just like, these are actually really solid, and I probably never would have played these as much as I did without knowing. So yeah, it's interesting to see what's happening. Like my top 10 decks that I've played, you know, I have a 9 win deck, an 8 win deck, an 8 win deck. All three are AOA,
Wow.
which is like super, super like crazy to me. And then I have only one representative from Coda, three representatives from Worlds Collide, two from Dark Tidings, and zero from Mass Mutation. But
Mhm.
Mass Mutation was also like, I think, the beginning of the pandemic, and at that time I was getting most of my decks from sealed events
Oh, sure.
and playing locally. So I didn't really give that expansion too much of a chance there because it's the expansion that I have the least amount of decks for. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to see, how many wins you can sort of eke out with what kinds of decks and stuff like that. And right now, if you were to tune in to my stream, if I stream Keyforge, I'm playing these top 10
Mm.
decks. I'm revisiting them. I'm halfway through. I've played my Coda and my 4 AOA decks, so I'm in the middle of Worlds Collide. And some of them are doing just as well, and some of them are falling completely flat. And
Sure.
and that in itself is really interesting to see as well.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, was that a moment in time, or is this a solid deck? So it's been very interesting and very rewarding. So I do want to encourage people, if you're looking for a way to reinvigorate like your exploration,
Mm.
and your sort of sense of discovery, in your collection, and to do it this way. It's a very interesting way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about my collection now and thinking of, man, I have a collection of a few hundred, so I am sure there are some gems in there that I just
Yep.
have not identified. That there are some decks that I might even slot into my triad lineup, and I will something. Now on the Crucible online, if you're playing against randoms, has this normally been in the competitive queue or the casual queue?
So here's the thing. I usually play in the casual queue,
Yeah.
right? Until I get to a point where I am about uh when I hit about like SAS like 73,
Oh, sure,
74.
sure.
I have gotten a lot of, unfortunately, sort of toxic games. Where if
Yeah.
I'm bringing those decks into casual, I'm immediately getting people yelling at me in chat, um, about the in-game chat
Yeah.
about why am I taking this deck here? Like I should be in competitive, whatever, blah blah blah. Which I have a lot of feelings about, and I don't know if we want to. If this
Right.
is the platform for airing of grievances, but to me, I'm there for fun, and I always put myself in the shoes of what if I was a newcomer, and this was what I was met with. I
Yes.
would this would turn me off on the game completely. And would you have done this if we were sitting at a table face to face?
Right.
You probably wouldn't have, and
Yeah.
we would have just played.
Yeah.
But it's a little. But to prevent that kind of stuff, I get to a point where SAS looks a little high. I will just automatically go into competitive
Sure.
because I tend to get better games at those levels,
Yeah.
I guess,
And
or more people with patience.
yeah, because I think
Yeah.
I think the competitive queue generally is a bit gives you a more emotionally healthy opponent.
Yes.
Because even if you're playing something lower SAS, I've discovered that even playing it in competitive, I'm still going to get some good games, and the games will be better if my opponents are better. And I've seen other people do this. I'll be in the competitive queue with a very high end deck of my own, and I'll be against an AOA deck that I'll just glance at and I'll be like, oh, that seems, I mean, pretty normal. But then they give me a big old run for my money. And when I did my CD-ROM now the NARP method of playing 150 games for a deck I opened randomly, which I would not recommend
Oh my god.
unless you like pain. I played 150 games with Keepers the Strong Chinned, which I think was a 67 SAS, and I played it in competitive every time.
Hmm.
Eventually, most of my games were adaptive games towards the end, which was a lot of fun. But being in the competitive queue was a good pressure test, even outside of just the opponent's attitudes. It was a good pressure test of the deck. Even if I was losing, I had to fight tooth and nail for any out I could find. And I guess this is, if you want to be a bit sweatier about it. I even had a lovely game where a very polite opponent told me GG because they had looked at my deck list and I was like, yeah, there's no way he can, come back from this. And I said, no, that's a bit too early because I had a remote access to use his golden spiral to
Uh
then
huh.
ready and use, my wormhole technician. And I hit like the 1 in 12 card that I like needed to like get across the finish line. And I remember that moment, and it's only because I was, throwing Keepers the Strong Chin, a fairly normal deck, up against everything in the competitive queue, and that's where like I learned how to play to the outs as hard as possible with Keepers. And I have yet to lose an adaptive match with Keepers because I think I've been ground under the tires of competitive decks with that deck so much that I know exactly how to dismantle it.
Yeah, no, 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 exactly. It's like
you
you
know,
you start to know you can pilot it in a way that nobody else can, and I
yeah,
do enjoy that sort of that idea of playing a deck a lot and then becoming like almost like one with the deck, like like the deck
hmm
is telling you things.
yes. And keepers 100% does. Most of my opponents in things like the Ancient Bear Republic League in adaptive matches end up wanting to talk afterwards. They're like, "So what was the secret?" And I was like, "Well, here's XYZ things I learned from my experience of playing this deck so much and losing with it so much, but taking the losing seriously, right?"
No, yeah,
Which that's the
I
that's the
do like
sweaty
that
side of it.
attitude, the taking the
Yeah,
losing seriously. I have I do not concede matches
yeah,
in the Crucible.
smart.
That's like sort of one of those things where even if I'm losing, um, sometimes I see that my opponent is doing something really cool with their deck, and I kind of put myself in their position and be like, they're stomping me right now, but they're probably having a really great time stopping me right now. You know what I mean? And trying to like push it
Right,
to the limit. And so and then sort of my mindset also changes where I'm like, just one key. Like I will not let you win without me forging a key.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like now that becomes my new goal. Or it's like I have a binate ruptured interdimensional graft, I will get this off at least once
Hmm.
in this game. And so my mindset sort of switches mid game, where it's just like, I'm not about, maybe I don't think I'm going to win this game, but I am going to keep playing because I have sub goals I can do. And I also know how it feels when you're on the other side, and sometimes you just want to show off the power of a deck, or you're just so excited that you're doing so well that your deck, like maybe you get an amazing first hand
Hmm.
and stuff like that, and to sort of take away the enjoyment of that from somebody else, I usually feel bad about, because I'm just like, no, you're who knows, your deck, maybe you've never played this way before,
Sure.
and you're just so excited to see it, and then you're being able to like figure out new things that are happening with that deck, be like, oh, that's how that's supposed to work if I have all this stuff in place. I've
Hmm.
only never had this stuff in place before. And so I like to just play games out through.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that's a waste of time, but to me, it's just, again, it's not about like, making sure I win every game and sort of padding my numbers and all that kind of stuff. It's just the fact that I'm playing the game,
Yeah.
for me, is what I
Exactly.
mean by that.
Owning your play experience.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what you want from that. And I
yeah,
think
exactly.
there's room for, right, a concession. I know some people have mentioned, if you see a deck list and you're like, this is not a matchup I even want to do, you just have that expectation, a polite concession there. But I really appreciate the attitude, especially in KeyForge, where you're saying, I'm not going to give up till the game is over. I know Tabletop Royale, mutual friends of ours, as they're streaming their games, they don't scoop. A final turn might come around. They say, okay, I've got nothing in my hand, like mathematically.
Yep,
I don't even have a Merkins. Like there's nothing. Um, but they don't scoop just because you want to fight it out and see what happens. Now, sometimes it's inevitable. You say, "Oh, I'm going to lose," and then, yep, you do lose.
yep,
But without romanticizing it too much, I do think there's a value, a value in sticking it out for sure,
yeah.
for sure.
I mean, but and it also, I mean, it's like, again, it's like I always want to assume that the my opponent is a good person, and that like I'm giving them a nice experience, by
Sure.
by doing so. If somebody is obviously toxic, um, and they're just BMing you throughout and all this other stuff, I mean, I think that's okay if you want to leave, but
Right. Yeah, that's fine.
yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah,
can ditch a meanie. You can ditch a meanie. We're Zach from Call of Discovery, along with Lyle. We are giving you permission to ditch meanies.
yeah. Ditch a meanie. You know what I mean? This is your experience as well, right? You
Yes.
you want
Yes.
to leave with a good experience as well.
Yeah. And it's funny, as you talked about the SAS Climb, as I got in touch with you and we figured out a topic. Even just since then, thinking about the SAS Climb, I'm now imagining a SAS Climb, like getting some of my personal friends together, group, like getting all our decks together on decks of Keyforge through the team thing, and then
Hmm.
doing like a SAS Climb among our whole collection, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like we just get in the bottom four decks, and then we all just start to play each other, and then you move up to the next available deck. Like once a deck has taken two losses, like how fun could that be to do SAS Climb as like a SAS Climb pod? You know?
That would be amazing,
Yeah.
right? You could do your own. And speaking of tabletop royale, I mean, you could do your own like tournament of champions,
Right. Yeah.
of that kind of stuff. And I do really like that too. I mean, when I play on stream, there's a thing where I will have chat up and people will say, I'm putting a quarter on the table, like they'll want next game,
Mm,
and they see the SAS rating of the deck that I'm playing, and they will bring a similar SAS rating. And I just love playing against people in the community, because again, you're going to have a really positive experience and a really positive game, and it makes it easier to lose because you're losing to a friend.
right. Right.
But I think me playing on stream has sort of, made some people in the community look at their deck lists, be like, well, what do I have around 62 that I could
Mm,
possibly play? And they see a deck list and they're like, you know what, I haven't played this deck. like in a while. Like let me try to get it in get a game in on stream or something like that. And so it's almost similar to what you were saying, where you're just like, okay, well, let's sort all of our decks together and play, yeah, and play a little pod down there at the at any level. So I do encourage all that stuff. It's a way to it's a way to enjoy your collection.
Excellent. Well, Lyle, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about the SAS Climb, and we got to hear all about CritCamp. So, Lyle, where can people find you and Chris as CritCamp all across the internet?
Great. We stream 3 times a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, right now on twitch.tv/critcamp. All of our VODs go onto YouTube at youtube.com/critcamp. And you could tweet at us at critcamp. You can tweet at me personally at Moscato_Lyle. And you can join our Discord at discord.gg/critcamp.
Awesome. Well, listener, definitely look up Lyle and CritCamp. Give them a watch. There's so much content on YouTube. And of course, they're going live all the time over on twitch.tv. So be sure to check them out. It is well worth your time. And you'll probably even see me in those in chat a few times a month. So if you're enjoying Call of Discovery, make sure you're subscribed to us so you can see us every time we drop a new episode. And if you're new to Keyforge, make sure you're visiting that new player guide on Archon Arcana. We've linked it below so that maybe even if you have a friend getting into it, you're linking them that new player guide, because it's such a great place for people to get started on their own journey into this wonderful game. Just a reminder that we do have a Patreon if you're looking to support us monetarily. The rewards there are things like our exclusive Discord, where we get comments and questions about the show, as well as Beyond Discovery, our behind-the-scenes podcast just for our Patreon subscribers. Let us know what you'd like to see more or less of in future shows by interacting with us across all of social media on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@callofdiscovery.com. But most importantly, dear listener, if you think a friend would enjoy this podcast, please help them to discover it. Have you answered the call of discovery?